What's up, everybody? You probably noticed me and Ruckus back at the grind. Well, Ruckus kicks it in front of the heater while I work. And then I got home last night and my heating element burnt out, so it was rusted into place. That was about 3 hours to replace. So I've been wanting to make this video for a couple days, just hadn't had the time or energy. But I'm sure you guys heard about the new boogeyman. Oh no, Tsar Putnikov is gonna put atomics into space. Really? Didn't we accomplish that like 60 years ago or so? By the way, you know that Edvard Munch's The Scream has all the vibrant colors in the sky because of a major volcanic eruption. And, before I started studying this stuff for myself, 5, 6 years ago, we were kind of taught that that was ancient history, never actually happened in real life, but it actually happens every 100, 200 years. Anyway, Tsar Putnikov and his evil cat are going to bring the world to its knees with new sharks with frickin' laser beams on their heads pointed at satellites. So let's talk about this Jetsons world that we live in. I mean, we are just so unbelievably high tech that if something happened to our space birds, well, life couldn't continue, could it? At least they've convinced most people that's the way the world works, but I'm here to tell you that we're living a lot closer to the Flintstones than the Jetsons. Especially the bit about all these guys in funny hats that are running the show. So, before you go packing your bags from Mars, let's bring it back down to Earth with a little bit of a reality check. First off, our most advanced space age technologies that sets us apart from the dinosaurs. The super duper high tech nuclear energy. I mean, only MIT physicists understand how this works, right? Well, it's getting harder and harder to find this footage, but you should definitely look into Galen Windsor. He was actually the number one head honcho of safety in the early days of this program, and he talked about how they would go down to storage and pick up one hunk of uranium, stick it in one pocket, another hunk, stick it in another pocket, and walk up to where they were working, making sure the two didn't touch, because if they did, then that would reach critical mass, which is just an unstoppable chain reaction once you get enough of this in a certain amount of area. But do you guys know what type of super high technicity happens after that? Well, this generates an incredible amount of heat. And if you take that heat and put it in close proximity to water, then the water starts boiling off into steam and it turns a turbine, otherwise known as a steam engine. So, in effect, our super high tech atomic power generation systems are just steam engines, guys. It works on the exact same principle as a coal burning stove running a steam turbine. And if you listen to Galen's lectures on this, he says that the financiers were the ones that told everybody that it's super duper dangerous. Because if they didn't, then by now we'd be spending about $5 a month for our electricity. But that's one popular misconception about our super Jetsons world that we live in. This is nothing more than steam power and a lot safer than they tell you. Yeah, but if Tsar Putnikov takes out our space birds, then we can't have any flights. Well, you remember a few years back, 2017, when MH370 just vanished without a trace and nobody has a clue what happened? Well, a satellite giant decided that somebody should do something about that. I mean, we've got all these birds up there and nobody's actually using them for anything, apparently. So why don't we use these to track these airplanes? And remember, this is 2017, and they're pitching this idea that, hey, if we put this Arion system in place, then it'll allow airlines to receive a steady stream of aircraft position data wherever they are on Earth, not from receivers on the ground, but from satellites. Nobody thought of trying this before 2017? And did you guys realize that Arion is the only communication provider that covers 100% of the planet? Insert Discworld comments here. And that's not even concurrently. This is over a 62-hour period that they are able to cover 100% of the landmass. So this is how they always word things, They track their planes through a combination of methods, including satellite communications, they put that first, radar systems, and data transmitted from the aircraft itself. But in reality, this ADSB is a land-based system that takes care of all the flight control around the world. Each of these land-based radar systems have a range of 30 nautical miles, and evidently that's the whole diameter of coverage and not the radius, because it's only effective for 12 miles off the coastline. That's why flights like MH370 out over open ocean can just disappear without a trace, because once you're more than 12 miles away from one of these radar stations, then you're invisible. And unless you want to wait 62 hours for one of these Spacebird balloons to float over into a coverage area, then you're on your own. Okay, well, I mean, internet and cell phones, that's got to be Spacebirds. Let's review some 8th grade science, which when I was in 8th grade, there was no such thing as cell phones. And they're called cellular because each individual tower broadcasts to a certain area, and that's one cell. The range per tower depends on density and a lot of things, but 30 miles is doing good for a cell tower. So you say something into your phone, it broadcasts that over to the cell tower, and then down through the ground through a fiber optic line that has all of these cell towers connected. It then routes that signal to the nearest cell tower to the person that you're talking to, and then for the last 20, 30 miles, whatever it is, broadcast it to the person you're talking to. So this entire system is really no more advanced than CB radios that have been around for 70, 80 years. Or radio broadcast towers for that matter. They're all connected by hardwired fiber optic cables carrying the signal to the closest area and then broadcasting the last little bit. So if Rasputnikov interferes with our Spacebirds, it's not going to affect our communications in the least little bit. Well, yeah, but our GPS would go down. Really? Because, up until just a few years ago, if I went up into the Sierra Nevadas, GPS couldn't find me. Still to this day, you can't find a GPS that will cover all of Africa. Now, for something that is floating 300 miles above the surface, it seems like that would not be a problem in the least little bit. Some old school YouTube truth videos were things about like White Alice, where up in Alaska they would bounce signals off of the tropopauls, which evolved into high frequency radio waves bouncing off of the ionosphere. So if you've ever wondered how you can take your television dish and point it in a general southern direction and hit a little bitty Spacebird hundreds of miles away, well, I think they've got transmission stations somewhere down in the Caribbean that covers all of North America. One would assume this could be beamed down to any point on Earth and you could watch your TV, right? But no, you get more than 50 miles north or south of the border, and your dish TV doesn't work anymore. It's just a very specific range there. Yeah, but international communications would be shut down. Remember the Hunga Tonga eruption a couple years ago? That severed the underwater cable that connected all of them to the internet, so they no longer had internet. Because all of these communication systems that keeps the world connected comes from boats like this with these ginormous spools of wire, and they just spool it out across the ocean floor from one continent to the next, and they're just now hooking up islands out in the Pacific. But you see all of these cables here, this is what actually keeps the world connected. It has absolutely nothing to do with space. Before that, they had international telephone lines. Before that, they had international telegraph lines. This is going all the way back to 1858. So the latest boogeyman is that Zarputnikov can put atomic firecrackers up into space. Well, supposedly we've been able to do this since 1958. I mean, that's how these intercontinentals are supposed to work. They go up into space and then fall down where you want them. Yeah, right. That's why last year, when the blue-yellow conflict started off, they ran this article about a madcap plot to crash a 164-foot space rocket packed with 9 tons of kablooey sauce on the Capitol. They even said that we have the capability to go any direction we want after launch. Wow, okay, so you're telling me that you have the capabilities of 1958 on hand? Because that's what they were saying that they could do in 1958. Remember the whole cold dub? Yeah, they had school kids running drills where they sat down under their desks with their head between their knees because of this for generations. And now in 2023, this is some madcap plot to be able to claim to be able to do this. But now, in 2024, this is your new boogeyman. If they had the capability to fly one of these into space in 1958 and then back down to Earth accurately, well, all they had to do was detonate while it was up there. Everybody knows what a EMP is. It would just fry everything that was supposedly up there. But in fact, none of this is how the world actually works. But they've done a good job of convincing everybody that it is. Static out.